Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a undercover of law question. Is it true that what goes around comes around? This is Trump's second try at banning travel from countries that you could say are filled with people that don't look like what he thinks Americans should look like. Well, it's not really the second try. It's actually more like the 4.0 version of it. But will he get away with banning travel from 7 African countries, 2 Middle Eastern countries, and Laos, and what used to be called Burma, Myanmar, but not Egypt, which we'll go into a little bit because that's important. And what does it have to do with the recent terrorist attack that happened in Boulder, Colorado, where that man was setting people on fire, in which looks to be an obviously anti-Semitic crime? Does it have anything to do with that? Well, let's take a deep dive and find out. But first, reminder, hit that subscribe button. We want you to help us build this channel into the biggest and best legal analysis and political analysis channel. And we are not beholden to anyone except you and our analysis. So hit that button. Now, like I was saying, it's not really the second time that Trump's trying this. It's more like 4.0 he's trying it. And let's see why it's really 4.0. Take a look at his proclamation. And what he calls this is restricting the entry of foreign nationals to protect the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. Vague enough for you on that last part? And he likes to be self-congratulatory. His first part of this is, quote, during my first administration, I restricted the entry of foreign nationals into the United States, which successfully prevented national security threats from reaching our borders, and which the Supreme Court upheld. Okay, yeah, they upheld it after 3 tries, okay, as this NPR article points out. The first one that he did, the so-called Muslim ban, was just blatantly racist, blatantly unconstitutional, discriminating towards people of a particular religion. So they had to keep working that over and over again until they finally got a version that the Supreme Court went for. In this bit of excellent analysis by NPR, they're talking about back in Trump 1, the original oral arguments, when they say that the justices seemed ready to side with Trump. They were right. And the court was ruling on the third version of the ban, which Trump at that time complained was a watered down version. And they let it go into effect. And like the earlier 2 bans, that 3.0 version was directed pretty much at 5 mainly Muslim countries, also added North Korea and officials from Venezuela. In that Supreme Court opinion, Chief Justice Roberts put aside any concerns he might have had over Trump's blatant racist anti-Muslim statements. Instead, he focused, as he usually does, on presidential power and preserving it or expanding it, really. We'll put this little excerpt up for you. Roberts wrote, the president, Roberts said, has extraordinary power to express his opinions to the country as well. The plaintiffs argued that Trump's past campaign and other statements about Muslims should be taken into account, but the majority said it is not the court's role to do that. The Chief Justice, he didn't dispute that Trump did have anti-Muslim statements. This is the quote. Writes Roberts, the issue, however, is not whether to denounce the president's statements, but the significance of those statements in reviewing a presidential directive, neutral on its face, addressing a matter within the core of executive responsibility. In doing so, the court must consider not only the statements of a particular president, but also the authority of the presidency itself. Again, what he's saying is he's not going to intrude upon this protected zone he gave Trump, just like the immunity issue, right? The analysis from NPR is saying the court's not going to inhibit the president's flexibility in responding to changing world conditions. And here is the real key. As long as the president presents an explanation for the travel ban that is, quote, plausibly related to a legitimate national security objective, Robert's words, then the president's on firm constitutional grounds. So what kind of standard is that, plausibly related? It seems pretty weak, but it was good enough for the Supreme Court. And so now let's go back to this version of the proclamation. Learning from that, you would think learning from that, they tailored it this time to do a lot of invocations of national security. But they just can't help themselves by being so sloppy. So take a look at this particular screenshot here from the proclamation. He writes, I also stated the United States must be vigilant during the visa issuance process to ensure that those aliens approved for admission into the United States do not intend to harm Americans or our national interests. More importantly, the United States must identify such aliens before their admission or entry into the United States. The U.S. must ensure that admitted aliens and aliens otherwise already present in the U.S. do not bear hostile attitudes towards its citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles, and do not advocate for aid or support designated foreign terrorists or other threats to our national security. Right? That is just extremely vague, and let me just focus on one aspect of the vagueness, right? Culture? How the hell do you define that they have opinions that are somehow hostile to our culture? I mean, what are we talking about here? Do you side with Drake versus Kendrick Lamar? People who don't like to watch Friends reruns? I'm not a big fan of the Friends show, sorry. That's the kind of thing that makes no sense. Like, how are you going to determine that, much less determine that ahead of time before people come into the country? Now, having focused on these individuals with like bad cultural issues, or maybe they harbor sympathies for who the Trump administration wants to designate as terrorist-affiliated people, he then goes on to make it all about countries, not individuals. Among the reasons that he wants to ban a bunch of these countries is that they have higher overstay rates for their visa people. So what does that mean? You come in with, let's say, a tourist visa, you can stay a certain amount of time, you overstay it, and then you're illegal in the country. But you got in legally with a tourist visa, or a foreign student visa, as Elon Musk did, and then he never went to school. I digress. How is that in control of the country? How are they supposed to vet people to make sure they're not going to overstay their visa? What are you going to ask them? Are you going to overstay your visa? It makes no sense. So, as an example, Sierra Leone and Togo. According to the proclamation, Sierra Leone has a overstay rate of 15.43%, and that's one reason they're being banned. Togo has an overstay rate of 19.3%. And again, the point here is, what does that have to do with the country's screening mechanisms? To really underscore just how shoddy and weak the factual nexus is here in Trump's proclamation, take a listen and look to what Trump has to say about it, what his reasons are.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them.
Right. And as I pointed out on CNN right after that, I happened to be on CNN right after that senator was, the defendant in the Boulder, Colorado incident is not from Egypt. Excuse me, is from Egypt, which is not on the ban, right? So, but Trump makes a big deal of this, underscores the reason for banning these people overstaying their visa. That person allegedly did overstay their visa. But his country's not on the ban. So which is it, right? Are we talking about people that somehow you have to figure out if they're going to overstay their visa, or are they terrorists before they come here, or are these countries doing something wrong? He doesn't know. And honestly, the Supreme Court is going to let him do this despite these factual inconsistencies, the lack of logic. Take a listen to this esteemed legal analyst talking about it.
The factual predicate here, I think, is really poor. I mean, he talks about the Boulder, Colorado suspect whose country is actually not on the banned list. He also has some kind of silly things, I think, which says, for example, some of the countries that face the bans or partial restrictions are people who have a higher percentage of people overstaying visas. I mean, how is a country supposed to screen for that? What's that got to do with anything? Individual people choose to overstay it. But
are you saying that's more of a responsibility of the United States?
Absolutely. In fact, I would argue most of this is responsibility of the United States to take care of problems overstaying within the U.S. And if they have information that particular people may have ties to terrorist groups, I mean, that's, again, something they need to look at. I think it's overbroad, but again, I think the president has been given the raw legal power to do this, but there'll certainly be legal challenges. I think at the end of the day, when it reaches the Supreme Court, probably on the emergency docket basis, I think they're still going to uphold it.
Right. Now, at the end of the day, it's all about Trump's transactional approach, meaning what kind of a deal, what business is good for his money, what kind of business is good for his base, which feeds his ego. And really, it's expressed perfectly here by the senator from Oklahoma who was on right before me. Take a listen.
We could go back through and use several different activities you want to. That's just fresh on people's mind. You know as much as anything, when you're doing retail, you sell what's fast, what is on people's mind at the time. This is explaining why we're doing it, but this isn't the reason why it was done.
Meaning, who cares about the substance, as he's telling Caitlin Collins? Who cares about the truth, logical connections? We're selling here, right? Surely y'all get that. This is just about selling things to people. However, the selling, it's really playing with people's lives. And that's the tragedy of the situation. So we'll keep an eye on this ban. Hasn't quite gone into effect yet. There are going to be tons of legal challenges to it. There may be some injunctions in some parts. Those factual problems will be challenged. However, I would say at the end of the day, when it gets to the Supreme Court, they're probably going to uphold it because of what they already did in Trump 1. They already gave them that raw power. But we'll keep an eye on it, keep shining sunlight on it. So good to talk to you. Thank you again for the replies and the comments. Can't get to all of them, but I do get to as many as I can and really appreciate you doing that. Talk to you soon.
I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popak Firm today at 1-877-POPAK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopakfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popak Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.